Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Khanyisa Jama, and I'll be presenting about Carduus nutans in South Africa. Carduus nutans is an Asteraceae, belongs in the Asteraceae family. It is a herb. It is a herb with spines that densely cover the stems and leaf margins, which gives the plant its spiny texture. The plant can actually grow up to 2 meters high. It's got these large pink flowers that nod at 90-degree angles. That's why it is called nodding thistle. Nodding thistle is native to Eurasia. It is used by humans as both medicine and for food. It has been introduced in countries like in various places in North America, South America, Australia and New Zealand. It is now considered invasive in most of these countries. In fact, it is declared as a noxious weed in Australia, New Zealand and 22 states in the USA. The plant primarily invades pastures and rangelands, but can be found on disturbed sites, waste areas, streams, grain fields, along roadsides, and areas disturbed by frequent flooding. It is an aggressive invader that outcompetes native species. The plant forms dense stems that crowd native plants and hinders the movement of livestock. The species has the ability to reduce productivity of rangelands and pastures by chemically inhibiting growth of other plant species. It's got allopathic properties. Carduus nutans in South Africa. It's interesting that the species has been in South Africa since 1925. First record was in 1925. And it was featured in the Sapia newsletter titled Emerging Invaders of the Eastern Cape, and that's how we got to know about the species. Thank you, Leslie. It is unclear how and why the species was introduced to South Africa, but it is still restricted in Grahamstown, Albany, and Alexandria districts. It is not categorized or listed on CARA or on NEMBA. Now, the question now we want to ask is, should we be worried about this species? We know that the species is a huge threat to other countries. The species has been in South Africa for many years, but still restricted in the Albany districts. Now, after a survey that was done by Leslie, a couple of localities were found. So could it be that the species is starting to spread? We don't know. Could it be that the species is in a different or in an unpreferred climatic region? That we don't know. So we are proposing a risk assessment project. Some of the questions that we want to answer are, what is the current distribution of Carduus nutans in South Africa? We will map the current Sapia records of existing populations. We will make initiatives to find new populations. We will do awareness raising campaigns, where we will motivate landowners to report new sightings of the species. We will do landowner surveys to actually predict if the species is spreading. So, if I come to you as a landowner, you will give me information of when you started noticing the species in your property. We also want to find which regions in South Africa are a threat of this species. So we will do climatic modeling, where we will try to find what is the climatic conditions of the native home, what are the climatic conditions of the places where the species invades, and compare that with the climatic conditions of South Africa, and that should give us an indication of which areas are a threat. We are hoping that the risk assessment will give us an indication of whether this species is a threat to South Africa or whether it should be listed as an invader requiring control. Part of the questions that we had was, should we be just concentrating on nodding thistle, or should we be also expanding our studies to all the thistles that could possibly exist in South Africa? Please report Carduus nutans to alienplants@sanbi.org.za or to Khanyisa Jama@sanbi.org.za. Thank you.
Any questions for Khanyisa about this new invader? Cliff? The question at the back.
I realize you have limited capacity and lots of things to do, but should we assume that we want to eradicate this thing? that it is going to be a problem. Go on with everything you're doing, but start to eradicate it now, parallel with all these studies.
Thank you for that comment. The main issue is that sometimes as our program, it is hard to prioritize species. It is hard to actually say which species do you start with when you work. So hence we are actually justifying our actions. We want to get rid of it because it seems like we're sitting and waiting for a bomb to explode. But then we actually want to justify our action and say this is what we found and that's why we're taking action.
Any more questions? There's a question there and John on the front here.
Okay. I just want to get clarity on the current locations of these species. Why I'm asking this is because I noticed the same, it might be same or similar species in Ermelo and the Carolina areas, but I will have to verify with my photos. I will take my laptops maybe during the day and show you the photos. But that one, I took those photos in, I think it was 2011. In the 2012, while I was driving in that area, I went to some farms. But they seem almost the same, especially when I look on the leaves and the flowers. And the way it's occurring is very dense in the farms and also along the N11, which you drive from Newcastle down to Ermelo, and by the road which you diverse to Bad Plus when looking down to Nespreet. It's occurring. Just one maybe under correction if they're exactly the same species, but it's almost look like the same species. I'll take my photos and check it during the day.
We'll talk after the presentation then.
That's a good connection. Yeah.
I can just make a comment that it's very likely that what you are looking at is Silebum marianum, the milk thistle. It's very widespread in South Africa. In fact, when I was doing the survey, I got them mixed up at first. They grow to about the same height. Silebum has got very similar leaves and prickly stems, and the flowers tend to be a little bit more purple than pink. Slightly different colour. So I would check on that. I think it's most likely Silebum.
Leslie, I think it's an important point for us, and I think Noletu's talk also alluded to that. We've got to know what we're dealing with and what are the lookalikes. So I think it's good to understand those distinctions. John, how can I have a question?
Yeah, just a general comment, I think, about thistles, because I think it's a really ecological conundrum. Why are they so problematic in Australia, New Zealand, and North America, and yet in Africa, or Southern Africa, they haven't really, there are lots of them, and they do form patches, but they're not that huge problem that they are over there. And I think that might you might bring that question into what you're trying to drive here, is do we really need to be worried because they've been here a long time and they don't look like they're going to do the things that they've done over other countries. And also seeing this one, the distribution in roadsides and old fields and things, do we worry about that? They're not going into natural vegetation, so we're more interested in preserving what natural vegetation we've got left rather than old roadsides and disused fields. It's just part of the bigger picture rather than...
Yeah. Is there a question, John?
So second what John was saying, and actually Khanyisa was going a wee bit on that at the top. So a lot of the species that we're doing, we're sort of wanting to do three things at the same time. Get some sort of risk assessment going, start controlling it, and also get to understand the actual mechanisms why these are not a problem, major problem in South Africa yet. But these are things that need to be happening in parallel. We need to be starting to control at the same time as doing these other aspects.
All right, any more questions or comments? Dave?
Just a comment that probably, one of the areas that's been, I think, very under-researched in this country is what effect the 1820 settlers had by introducing species into the Eastern Cape. There's been a lot done. We had a couple of theses and so on done around Cape Town, looking at the role that forestry played. But no one's ever done the equivalent for the Eastern Cape. To actually go and look at what those settlers. It's highly likely if this was a prized medicinal plant, it came in with them.
Yeah, so that could be a nice thing for the history of.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I think also just in relation to what John said now, I think we've had that issue with one of the brooms, the Spanish broom as well. We can't understand why, I think someone wrote a paper on that, why in other parts of the world it's such an enormous problem, and here, sort of, just sitting out here and there, and the question is, is it in the lag phase, is it going to explode, or is it just going to sit forever in these small patches, and why? So that is an interesting issue. Great. Khanyisa, can I have more questions for you? Thank you very much.